Good morning children. Welcome back to your chemistry class. Today we shall start with a new chapter, that is chemical bonding and molecular structure. So, we know that the atoms of elements, they combine to form molecules. A molecule, it is a stable particle of independent existence. It also is represented by a formula, right? So now during the study of the formation of the molecules, some important questions come to our mind, like for example, why do atoms combine to form molecules, or why do atoms combine in a fixed ratio to form a molecule, or maybe why the formula of water molecule is H2O, or why is carbon dioxide showing a linear structure whereas water shows a bent structure. So the answer to all such questions is given by the study of chemical bonding and molecular structure. Clear? So first let us understand what is the approach to the chemical bonding. We will understand how many types of chemical bonding we are going to study. Okay. So chemical bonding, just now I'll explain you the definition of what is chemical bonding, but chemical bonding is broadly divided into two parts. First part is your electronic theory, okay, and your second part is the quantum theory, right? So in electronic theory is what you have already studied earlier. It is further divided into three parts. What are they? The first one is called as the ionic bond. Okay, ionic bond means loss or gain of electrons. Second one is your covalent bond. Covalent bond over here means sharing of electrons. And the third one is your coordinate bond. Coordinate bond means donation of the electrons. So this is already what you have studied earlier. But here again in class 11, I will be explaining you about all the three electronic bonds, right? Now, what are we going to discuss under quantum theory? What kind of bonds are we going to talk over here? Basically, they are divided into two parts. The first one is called as valence bond theory, okay, which is also called as VBT in short. And the other one is your molecular orbital theory, which is in short called as MOT. So this is all what we have to do in this particular chapter, right? So moving ahead, what do we mean by chemical bonding first and foremost? So chemical bond, it is formed when the two atoms with incomplete valence electrons, they combine, right? So the net resulting force that holds the combining atom in a molecule, what is that called as? It is called as a chemical bond, right? And this chemical bond between the atoms, it is based on what? On the basis of law of lowering of potential energy, right? So if the energy of a molecule is lower than the sum of the energies of the isolated atoms, then the molecule formed is always stable, right? So both the electronic theory and the quantum theory, directly or indirectly, they describe the lowering of the potential energy, right? And this is the real cause of the chemical bonding. More the lowering of the potential energy, stronger is your chemical bond formed. I hope till here it's very clear. Now we shall move to the electronic theory first, and where we are going to study about ionic bond today. So let us understand the electronic theory of valency, that is the Cornelius approach. This theory is completely based on the electronic concept of atom. So according to this theory, the combination of two or more atoms involving redistribution of electrons in their outermost shell, either by transferring or by sharing, it takes place in such a way that all the combining atoms, they acquire stable noble gas configuration and also minimum energy, right? So Lewis dot structure, you already know how it is shown, and the Lewis symbols also. For example, for boron it can be shown like this. For oxygen, the atomic number is 8, so the valence electrons are how many? 6. So this is how it is shown. For nitrogen, you already know it is 7, so your valence electrons are 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. This is the way how the Lewis dot symbols are shown, right? So Lewis introduced simple notation to represent the valence electrons, and they are termed as Lewis symbols. They do not consider the inner shell electrons only. Only the valence shell electrons are considered over here, right? Now let us begin with the ionic or the electrovalent bond. So the chemical bond formed between two or more than two atoms. Of what kind? One will be a metal, the other will be a non-metal, where transfer of electron takes place. From where? From a metal to a non-metal, right? This is termed as electrovalent or ionic, or even you call it as polar bond. And the compound that is formed by this bond, they are termed as ionic bond or electrovalent bonds, right? The number of electrons which an atom loses or gains while forming an ionic bond, it is called as electrovalency, because we are talking about electrovalent bond. So what did I say? The number of electrons which an atom loses or gains while forming this ionic bond or electrovalent bond, they are termed as electrovalency. Now I am going to give you only few examples, because I know you have already done this before. Suppose we take the simplest of all the examples, like sodium. Now you already know that the atomic number is how much? 11. So how do we configure? 281. So what should be the symbol of sodium over here? Lewis symbol, Na with 1 dot, right? It combines with chlorine. Chlorine is 287, right? So 7 is the valence electron. So we are going to write here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Clear? Now what happens? This, let me show it with a cross. Now when there are two different elements, then we have two different signs, right? Do not put the same sign. Now transfer of this, if you check the electronic configuration, you will see that this is also unstable, this is also unstable. If it loses one electron, it follows the octet rule, and if it accepts one electron, it is also going to follow the octet rule. So this electron will be transferred to chlorine. Clear? And this way it is going to form an ion. When it is going to lose one electron, that is, protons are how many? 11. Electrons were how many? 11. One electron is lost, so electrons are less, protons are more. So this forms Na+. Similarly, protons here are 17, electrons over here are 17. One more electron has been accepted. What is more? Electrons are more. So over here we can show it like this. So with sodium I have already shown you, and chlorine, it accepts electron. So this is what it forms. The octet rule is clear, and this is the negative ion that is formed. And hence, when there are two opposite charges, forces of attraction takes place, and it forms a compound which is called as NaCl. I hope it's very clear to you. I'll give you one more example. Lithium oxide. Okay, so over here, lithium, what is the atomic number? It is 3. So 2, 1, right? It has to combine with one oxygen. Oxygen atomic number 2, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, I forgot to write over here. Plus there are 2 lithium. So lithium 2, 1, right? Now, when it loses one electron, it follows the duplet rule. When it loses one electron, it follows the duplet rule. And this oxygen, when it accepts 2 electrons, one from this lithium and one from this lithium, it follows the octet rule. So transfer of electron takes place. Clear? When transfer of electron takes place, what is it going to form? It is going to form lithium oxide. That is lithium. What is the plus ion, right? For this, then this is your oxygen. Oxygen forms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 electrons, minus 2. And lithium, this when loses becomes a positive charge, right? Thus, the formula that is formed is Li2O. So, I hope you have already understood how we do the ionic bonding, right? Now let us talk about the conditions that are required for the formation of this ionic bonding. So talking about conditions required for ionic bonding. So first point let's discuss over here, that is your ionization enthalpy. So what do we know? Lower the ionization enthalpy of an atom which forms cation on losing electron, it favors the formation of your ionic bond. Clear? So the element should be metal, that is it should be electropositive in nature. Is this point very clear? What did I say? Low ionization enthalpy always favors ionic bonding. Why? Because low ionization enthalpy also means that we are talking about a metal that is electropositive in nature. Then second point, okay, let me write down over here, low ionization enthalpy, right? Then we talk about electron affinity. So what do we know about electron affinity, or you may also call it as electron gain enthalpy? So electron affinity of an atom forming anion should always be high. That is, the element should be a non-metal. That is, it should be electronegative in nature. Clear? So over here, your electron affinity should be high. So if electron affinity is high, we are talking about a non-metal, and if we are talking about low ionization, we are talking about a metal. This is what I had told you, that ionic bonding always takes place between a metal and a non-metal, right? Now always remember, the formation of ionic compound is always favored by large size of the metal atom, right, or an ion, since an increase in size is always associated with decrease in the ionization energy. So you may say cesium, which shows the lowest ionization energy, is the best metal which is going to form ionic bonding with what? The small size or low charge on the anion, which will favor the ionic bonds. Why? Because this factor, it increases the electron gain enthalpy. So we can talk about fluorine. So cesium fluoride is the best example which shows your ionic bonding. I hope this part is clear. Then let's talk about the lattice energy. Now, let's talk about lattice energy. It is always equal to what? The energy released when the gaseous cations and anions, they combine and they form 1 mole of ionic compound, right? So what is lattice energy? Lattice energy is equal to the energy released when gaseous cations and anions combine to form 1 mole of ionic compound. Clear? So high lattice energy or high lattice enthalpy always favors the formation of ionic bond. Therefore, high lattice energy favors ionic bond, right? Now, the value of lattice energy, it depends on 2 factors, right? So, what are the factors on which this lattice energy depends upon? As I told you, it depends on 2 factors. The first is the charge on the ions, right? Larger the magnitude of charge on the ions, greater will be the force of attraction, and therefore larger is the amount of energy released or lattice energy released. What did I say? That larger the magnitude of charge on the ions, greater is the force of attraction, and therefore larger is the amount of energy, or what you call as lattice energy released. Clear? So one of the factors for lattice energy is what? Charge on ions. And what is the second factor? It is the size of the ions. Clear? So smaller the size, higher will be the value of lattice energy. Smaller the size, more is the lattice energy. Clear? So in short, we can conclude that ionic compound is formed easily when your I should write over here, when your lattice enthalpy plus your electron affinity is greater than your ionization energy. In that case, your ionic bonding is formed, okay, or an ionic compound is formed. I hope this point is clear. So, greater the electronegativity difference between the 2 atoms, higher will be the possibility of your ionic bond formation, right? No bond, remember, is 100% ionic. If I am giving you an example of cesium fluoride, I do not expect you to understand that is 100% ionic, right? Some percentage of every ionic bond has a covalent character as well, right? So 99% it is ionic, but 1% we can say that it also exhibits covalent bond. Then high electropositive elements of group 1 and 2, they always combine with highly electronegative elements of which group? Group 16 and 17, and they form this electrovalent or ionic compounds. Okay. So halides, oxides, sulfides, nitrates, hydrides of the alkali and your alkaline earth metals, they are generally ionic in nature. I hope this much is very clear. Now, let us talk about variable electrovalency. So, heavier p block elements, right, which have high atomic number, that is the transition elements and the inner transition elements, they generally show more than one electrovalency in the ionic compounds, and therefore they are called as variable electrovalency. Which ones did I say? The p block elements. P block elements are which one? P block elements, I am talking about transition and inner transition elements. Clear? What did I say? I said that the p block elements, right, the transition elements and the inner transition elements, they show this variable electrovalency. Now, what are the reasons for this variable electrovalency? I hope you understand variable electrovalency means they have more than one valency. For example, your iron. Iron is a transition element and its valency is +2, +3, or your lead, it is +2, +4, and so on. So today we are going to understand what are the reasons for this variable valency. So let us understand the reasons for variable electrovalency. The first point, let's talk about the instability of the core. Okay, instability of the core. So what do we understand by this? In the case of atoms of the transition elements, ions formed after the loss of valence electrons, they do not have stable core as their configuration of the outermost shell, right? As the configuration of the outermost shell is not equal to Ns2 Np6, but it is rather Ns2 Np6d, which ranges from 1 to 10. For example, let me explain it to you, then you will understand. Now let us understand what do we mean by instability of the core. In case of some of the atoms of transition elements, ions formed after the loss of valence electrons, they do not have stable core as the configuration of outermost shell is not equal to Ns2 Np6, but it is equal to Ns2 Np6d, the d block, which where electron ranges from 1 to 10. So let us understand it with an example and then I shall repeat it again. So let's take an example of iron, right? So iron, what is the atomic number? Atomic number is 26. How do we configure this? Dash 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 3s2, 3p6, 3d6, 4s2. Okay. Now let's look at Fe2+. This will be 24. So how will we configure this? 3s2, 3p6, 3d6. This is not stable, isn't it? Let's take Fe3+. Here the atomic number will be 23. So this becomes how what? 3s2, 3p6, 3d5, and this is your stable ion. Thus, we see that iron shows 2 plus 2 and plus 3 valencies, right? Now, copper Cu2 plus, you know, it is more stable in the aqueous solution than Cu plus. Why? Due to its high hydration energy. What did I say? Cu2 plus is more stable in aqueous solution than Cu plus. Why? Because of its high hydration energy. Clear? Next, we come to the second reason. The second reason is the inert pair effect. Now, some of the heavier representative elements of the third, fourth and the fifth groups, they show lower valencies. That is, only electrons present in the p shell are lost and your ns2 electrons, they remain intact, right? So the reluctance of that s electron pair to take part in the bond formation, it is known as inert pair effect. Again, I repeat, what did I say? That there are certain heavier representative elements which are found in the third, fourth and the fifth groups. They show lower valencies. What do I mean by that? That only electrons which are present in the p subshell, they are lost, but ns2, that is s subshell electrons, they remain intact. Thus, the reluctance of these s electron pair to take part in the bond formation is known as your inert pair effect. Let's take an example of tin, right, which is found in the fourth group. So the configuration goes like this: 2, 8, 18, 18, 5s2, 5p2. Okay, and if you look at the Sn2 plus, we find it as 2, 8, 18, 18, 5s2. So this is more stable, isn't it? Over here, what has happened? Only 5p electrons are lost. S shows the reluctance and this forms a inert pair effect. Clear? Let's take one more example of lead, which is also found in the fourth group. So its configuration will be 2, 8, 18, 18, 32, 18, 6s2, 6p2, right? And if we take lead 2 plus, then its valency becomes what? 2, 8, 18, 32, 18, 6s2. So over here, the 6p electrons, they are lost. So as we move down the group, what happens? The inert pair effect, it increases. When sufficient energy is provided, then these s electrons also enter into the bond formation and higher valencies are observed, right? So this tendency to show higher valencies is found lesser in your lead and bismuth, but more it is in case of the lighter elements, for example your tin, antimony and so on. So inert pair effect is caused due to the penetration of ns2 electrons to some extent to the penultimate shell containing 18 electrons, thereby which are attracted strongly towards the nucleus. So I hope this inert pair effect is also clear to you. Now we shall talk about some general characteristics. Now these general characteristics you already know. So quickly I'll just go through some points about ionic compounds, right? That is, the electrovalent compounds or ionic compounds, you know that they are crystalline in nature. I'm not writing it down, I've just written this point. Hear it carefully. Then the ionic compounds, they have high melting and boiling points. Why? Due to the strong electrostatic forces of attraction which exists in the ionic solids. Clear? Then the ionic compounds, they are hard and brittle in nature. This hardness is due to the strong forces of attraction between the opposite charged ions, and the brittleness is due to the movement of the layer of crystal over the other layer. Clear? Then electrovalent compounds, they, as you know, they are fairly soluble in polar solvents, but they are insoluble in non-polar solvents. Now this happens due to high value of dielectric constant of water, that is the electrostatic forces of attraction between the ion, it decreases, and these ions, they get separated easily and they easily are dissolved in the solvent, that is in water. The electrovalent compounds, they dissolve as I told you in a solvent if the value of solvation energy is also higher than the lattice energy. Remember this point. What did I say? That solvation energy should always be higher than the lattice energy. Then the electrovalent compound easily dissolves in the solvent. So over here, like NaCl or your magnesium sulfate, they are more soluble in water. But if you say lead chloride or barium sulfate or calcium fluoride, they are almost insoluble in water. Why? Because their lattice enthalpy or lattice energy is high and their solvation or their hydration energy is small. Clear? Then ionic compounds, they do not conduct electricity in the solid state. You already know they conduct electricity always in their molten state or in their aqueous solution. Then the aqueous solutions of the ionic compounds, they give ionic reactions. Why? Due to the presence of ions. These reactions are also very fast, and ionic bonds, they are non-rigid and also non-directional. These compounds, they do not show even your stereoisomerism. Clear? So this was all about your electrovalent bond or ionic bonding. Now in this part only, Born-Haber cycle also has to be understood, which I will be explaining to you in the next video. Thank you.